Have you ever looked at a man and thought, there is no way he's as uninterested as he pretends to be? Maybe he acts cool. Maybe he plays it distant. Maybe he swears he's not thinking about you like that. Yet something in the way he watches you, responds to you, or reacts to you tells a completely different story. This video opens with the truth most people never talk about. When a man is secretly obsessed, he doesn't always chase. Sometimes he hides, not because he doesn't feel anything, but because he feels too much, too fast, and doesn't want anyone, especially you, to notice. You'll hear why some men mask their emotions with calmness, disinterest, or even slight detachment, all while their behavior is quietly exposing them. We dive into the subtle cues most women overlook, the micro behaviors, the timing of his reactions, the small mistakes he makes when he's trying too hard to look unaffected. This intro will pull you into a new way of understanding male psychology, why he overthinks before replying, why he gets noticeably tense when you mention other men, why he remembers tiny details you forgot you even said, why his energy spikes when you enter a room, but drops the moment he realizes he's showing too much. From the very first second, you'll recognize signs you've sensed, but never had the words for. Get ready, because once you see these behaviors clearly, you'll never look at a man's cool demeanor the same way again. There's a reason many men hide the depth of their interest, and it rarely has anything to do with a lack of feelings. In fact, the stronger the attraction, the more likely a man is to try to disguise it. This part of the video reveals the psychological tension happening beneath the surface. The tug-of-war between what he feels and what he wants to appear to feel. When a man becomes deeply interested, especially early on, he often fears losing control of the situation. Interest makes him vulnerable, and vulnerability feels like risk. He doesn't want to expose those emotions until he knows it's safe, and he definitely doesn't want to be the one who appears more invested. So instead of leaning in, he pulls back, not because he wants distance, but because he wants protection. You'll notice men hide their interest when they've been hurt before, or when they assume showing enthusiasm gives you the upper hand. Some men believe that revealing too much will make them appear needy, weak, or overly available, all things men are socially taught to avoid. It's not just emotional fear, it's pride, ego, and self-preservation mixing together into a confusing behavior pattern. This is why you'll see him hesitate before replying, even if he's been staring at your message. It's why his body language shifts when he's around you. He becomes alert, almost overly controlled, as if managing himself in real time. He wants you to notice him, but not enough to realize how much he thinks about you. So he modulates his tone, his expressions, even his level of enthusiasm. Another reason men hide interest is the fear of misreading your signals. If he isn't sure you feel anything back, he may suppress his excitement in an attempt to not scare you off. Ironically, this often creates mixed signals that confuse both sides. What's important to understand is that emotional concealment isn't lack of attraction. It's a defensive strategy, a way to stay in the game without risking full exposure. Once you recognize the quiet ways he tries to manage his feelings, you'll start seeing the truth behind his controlled exterior, the interest he's working so hard to hide. When a man is secretly obsessed, but trying to keep his feelings hidden, his communication becomes one of the biggest places where the truth slips through. No matter how controlled he tries to be, there are tiny, involuntary behaviors that reveal exactly what he's feeling. These aren't loud or dramatic signs. They're the subtle, almost accidental cues that show up in his voice, his timing, and the way he structures even the most casual conversations with you. One of the first clues comes from his response patterns. Not the obvious messages he sends, but the invisible moments surrounding them. If he answers quickly, then suddenly slows down, he's trying to recalibrate himself, giving you the illusion that he's not eager, even though his instinct was to reply instantly. If he responds in short bursts and then disappears, he's often fighting between wanting to talk and wanting to seem unaffected. Then there's the tone of his messages. You'll notice he adds more detail when he speaks to you than he does with others. He explains things, adds context, or uses emojis he doesn't use with anyone else. He might pretend it's casual, but the subconscious effort he puts into communicating with you is anything but. Another clue is how he reacts to your messages. If something you say excites him, he'll accidentally use more energy, a slightly longer laugh, a more enthusiastic comment, a warmer tone. If something makes him nervous, you'll see him backpedal, overthink, or try to neutralize his reaction. His emotional slips become little windows into how deeply he feels. Pay attention to the way he mirrors your communication style. If you send a certain type of message and he starts matching it, your pacing, your length, your expressions, that's his emotional alignment showing, even if he isn't aware he's doing it. He may also over-clarify himself with you, as though he cares more than usual about how he comes across. Men who pretend not to care don't put extra thought into their words. Men who are secretly obsessed do because every conversation feels like it matters. These small, unplanned communication clues reveal far more than his controlled behavior ever will. They're the cracks where the truth slips out, even while he's trying to keep everything hidden. A man who's secretly obsessed, but trying to maintain his cool, almost always exposes himself through his texting patterns. Even if he keeps his words neutral or tries to appear detached, the timing, tone, and rhythm of his messages give him away. Texting is where his self-control weakens, because it's where his emotions react before he has time to filter them. One of the strongest indicators is inconsistent pacing, not the kind caused by disinterest, but the kind rooted in overthinking. He may reply instantly the moment he sees your message, then suddenly force himself to wait hours for the next one. That stop and start pattern isn't random, it's him trying to balance his instinct to talk to you with his fear of looking too available. His instinct says respond now, but his ego says slow down. That internal conflict creates the inconsistency. Watch also for message revisits. He might open your message and leave it unread, not because he's ignoring you, but because he wants extra time to craft the right response. He's thinking about how he sounds, how you'll interpret it, and whether he's revealing too much. When a man is indifferent, he doesn't overanalyze his tone. When he's obsessed, he becomes careful, sometimes too careful. Another subtle sign is his emotional micro-reactions. If you send something that hits him emotionally, a compliment, a joke, a photo, or even a message about another man, he'll slip. His tone may shift, his energy may spike, or his formality may break. He'll suddenly text more enthusiastically, more playfully, or more intensely. These small shifts are signals of emotional investment he isn't consciously managing. Look for pattern mimicry too. If he starts matching the length of your messages, the timing of your responses, or even your texting style, it's a sign he's attuned to you. That alignment is subconscious. Men don't mirror someone they're indifferent to. He might also use texting as a quiet way to maintain closeness without exposing himself. This shows up as just checking in messages, random comments about your day, or sharing things he knows will interest you. These aren't coincidence. They're efforts to stay connected in a way that feels low risk. And finally, notice the moments he texts you when he doesn't have to. Late night thoughts, updates, inside jokes, these are all forms of emotional anchoring. A man hiding his obsession won't admit he misses you, but his texting patterns will. They always reveal more than the words themselves. When a man is deeply drawn to someone but determined to hide it, the psychology behind that behavior is far more layered than it looks. It's not simply about wanting to appear mysterious or playing some cliché hard-to-get game. In most cases, it's rooted in emotional instincts, past experiences, and a deep-seated fear of losing control over how he is perceived. One of the biggest psychological reasons he pretends not to care is fear of vulnerability. For many men, vulnerability feels less like honesty and more like exposure. Showing interest means risking rejection, and rejection isn't just disappointing. It hits the ego, challenges confidence, and can bring up old wounds. So instead of allowing those feelings to surface, he buries them under a calm, detached exterior. Another motive comes from wanting to maintain perceived power. If he believes that caring more makes him look weaker, he'll suppress any behavior that might show enthusiasm. Men often assume the person who seems less invested has the upper hand, so he tries to act indifferent as a form of emotional self-defense. It's not that he doesn't feel, it's that he wants to feel safe while he's feeling. Past heartbreak also plays a major role. If a previous relationship taught him that being open leads to pain, he'll overcorrect by being guarded. This guardedness can look like disinterest, but it's really a survival instinct, a way of protecting himself from repeating old mistakes. Then there's the psychological pressure of not wanting to misinterpret your signals. If he isn't sure where you stand, he may hide his interest to avoid embarrassing himself or appearing too eager. He waits, watches, and analyzes, hoping for confirmation before he lets his emotions slip. Some men hide their feelings because they worry their intensity will scare you off. They know they feel more strongly than they should at this stage, so they dial back their behavior to avoid overwhelming you. Ultimately, pretending not to care is rarely about lack of emotion. It's often the opposite. He cares so much that he's terrified of showing it. His emotional restraint is a protective shield, one that reveals far more than it hides once you understand the psychology behind it. When a man is secretly obsessed but working overtime to hide it, his behavior becomes a carefully managed performance. But no matter how composed he tries to appear, there are always small, almost imperceptible cues that slip through, the ones he assumes you'll never pick up on. These behaviors aren't dramatic or obvious. They're subtle, instinctive, and often completely unintentional. Yet they reveal everything he's trying to suppress. One of the clearest cues is the way he tracks your presence without making it obvious. Even when he pretends not to care, his eyes will flick toward you the moment you walk in, or his posture will shift ever so slightly, straighter, more engaged, more alert. He may try to act unaware, but his body reacts before his mind can shut it down. If you leave the room, you might notice he glances at the door or becomes slightly quieter, as if your absence alters the dynamic. Another subtle behavior is how he adjusts himself when you're nearby. He might fix his shirt, touch his hair, or shift his stance in a way that signals nervous energy. He's prepping himself subconsciously, positioning himself to seem more put together, not because he's vain, but because your opinion matters to him more than he wants you to realize. He may also show emotional micro-reactions he can't hide. If you say something that excites him, his face softens or his voice lifts. If you mention another man, his energy drops for a split second, a reaction so quick he hopes you'll miss it. His emotions leak out in flashes before he can neutralize them. Pay attention to the way he positions himself socially. He'll often hover near you without directly engaging, choosing a spot where he's close enough to stay connected, but far enough to maintain the illusion of detachment. He listens to your conversations even when he pretends not to, and he remembers details you didn't expect him to catch. He may also try to predict your needs quietly, holding a door, offering help, or stepping in at the right moment, all while acting like it was incidental. These aren't random acts. They're attempts to care without exposing how much he cares. And perhaps the biggest cue is how he shifts behavior based on your mood. If you're distant, he becomes more attentive. If you're cheerful, he relaxes. His emotional rhythm syncs with yours, even if he's pretending he's unaffected. These small, carefully hidden behaviors reveal the truth he thinks he's disguising, that he's far more invested than he'll ever admit out loud. When a man is trying to hide how deeply he feels, his emotions almost always betray him in the moments he least expects. These slips are quiet, quick, and sometimes so subtle he doesn't even realize they happen. But they reveal a level of attachment he's working hard to keep controlled. Emotional slips aren't about grand gestures. They're about the small cracks where his real feelings leak through, exposing the depth he tries to hide. One of the most telling emotional slips is the way he reacts to your vulnerability. If you open up about something personal, his entire energy shifts, softer voice, more attentive eyes, slower responses, as if he suddenly wants to protect the moment. Even if he tries to play it cool afterward, that instinctive tenderness is a sign of deeper emotional investment. Another slip shows up when you express frustration or disappointment, even if it has nothing to do with him. A man hiding his obsession will react more strongly than someone indifferent. He might look anxious, become overly reassuring, or try too hard to fix the situation. He cares about your emotional state more than he wants to admit, and it shows whenever your mood shifts. Pay attention to how he responds to other men around you. Even a subtle mention of someone else can trigger a quick flash of insecurity, a tight smile, a shorter reply, a sudden change in tone. He'll try to recover quickly, but that split-second reaction is the emotional truth. Jealousy is nearly impossible to mask when feelings run deep. You may also notice emotional slips during moments of laughter or connection. He'll get lost in the moment, smiling wider than he planned to, leaning closer without realizing, or speaking with more warmth than usual. For a second, he forgets to hide. For a second, you get the real version of him. Another revealing moment occurs when you pull back. If you take longer to reply, or become a little distant, his behavior shifts. He becomes more attentive, more available, more eager to re-establish closeness. That urgency is emotional, not logical. And then there's the slip he really can't control, the way he remembers the little things. Details you mentioned once, preferences you barely emphasized, emotions you thought he didn't notice. He recalls all of them. Not because he's trying to impress you, but because he subconsciously stores the things that matter to him. These emotional slips are the quiet confession he never says out loud. They reveal the depth he hides, the depth he feels every time he's near you. There's a point where secret obsession shifts from being charming or intriguing to becoming something that feels heavy, uncomfortable, or even emotionally draining. At first, his subtle attention may feel flattering. The extra effort, the nervous excitement, the quiet ways he shows he cares. But obsession has a tipping point. And when a man crosses it, his behavior starts to carry a different energy. It's no longer about genuine interest. It becomes about control, fear, and emotional intensity that doesn't align with the relationship's pace. One of the first signs that his obsession is no longer healthy is when his attention becomes overwhelming rather than supportive. He might start monitoring your actions more closely, wanting constant reassurance, or reacting too strongly if you don't respond the way he hopes. What once felt like sweet interest begins to feel like pressure, a sense that your emotional state is being managed for him, not for yourself. Another red flag is when he becomes too reactive to your availability. If a simple delayed reply causes noticeable frustration, mood shifts, or passive-aggressive comments, it's a sign his emotional investment is too intense for the level of connection you actually have. He's no longer hiding his feelings, he's letting them dictate his behavior. You may also notice obsession turning unhealthy when he tries to insert himself into areas of your life you haven't invited him into. He may ask overly personal questions, push for details about your daily routines, or show discomfort when you set boundaries. Instead of respecting your space, he feels entitled to it. Another sign is when his jealousy becomes disproportionate. A harmless conversation, a mention of another man, or even a social media interaction ignites anxiety or irritation in him. He may try to suppress it, but the emotional volatility is there, a clear sign of fixation rather than genuine affection. Pay attention to how he handles no, or even subtle resistance. A healthy man respects boundaries. An obsessed man tries to negotiate them, soften them, or push past them in small ways. He may disguise this as concern or passion, but it's really discomfort with not having emotional control. And perhaps the most telling shift is when his behavior starts making you feel watched instead of valued. When every reaction, every choice, every conversation feels like it's being analyzed, the dynamic stops feeling romantic and starts feeling intrusive. Obsession becomes unhealthy the moment his desire overrides your comfort, and when that happens, it isn't love, it's fear in disguise. When you realize a man is secretly obsessed with you, but trying to hide it, the way you respond shapes the entire dynamic. You don't need to confront him, expose him, or play any games. Your power comes from your ability to stay centered, calm, and confident, while he wrestles with feelings he's not ready to admit. Responding with strength doesn't mean being cold. It means creating a dynamic where you stay in control of your emotional space, regardless of how intense his hidden interest becomes. The first step is to avoid matching his emotional intensity, even if his attention feels flattering. Don't mirror the urgency or pressure he subtly projects. If he overthinks, you don't need to. If he pulls back to seem cool, don't chase. You maintain power by keeping your responses authentic, steady, and unaffected by his internal battle. Another key strategy is to set natural boundaries early. You don't need to announce them, you reinforce them through your actions. If he suddenly texts more because he's feeling insecure, respond normally, not with extra reassurance. If he becomes quiet to see if you'll react, don't break your routine. Quiet boundaries communicate confidence far louder than explanations ever could. You also maintain power by staying grounded in your own life. Keep your priorities intact. Your goals, your friendships, your routines. Obsession thrives when you orbit around him. It dissolves when you stay rooted in yourself. When he sees that your world doesn't shrink because he's emotionally tangled, it creates balance in the dynamic. If his behavior becomes inconsistent, hot one moment, distant the next, treat the inconsistency with neutrality. Respond when it feels natural, but don't participate in the emotional tug-of-war. Your stability forces him to regulate his own feelings instead of pulling you into them. Another powerful response is to communicate clearly when something crosses a line. You don't have to be harsh, just calm and direct. This shows you're not intimidated by his intensity and won't bend to it. Respectful assertiveness is magnetic. It shows strength, self-worth, and maturity. Most importantly, avoid trying to manage his emotions. You're not responsible for soothing his insecurities or decoding his hidden feelings. When you let him hold the weight of his own emotions, you stay empowered and he learns to meet you on equal ground. Responding without losing your power isn't about playing hard to get. It's about staying true to yourself while he figures out how to handle the depth of what he feels. By this point, you've seen the subtle ways a man's obsession can show up even when he's pretending not to care. Understanding these behaviors isn't about labeling him as good or bad, but about gaining clarity and protecting your own emotional well-being. Recognizing obsession allows you to navigate relationships with awareness instead of confusion. It's the difference between interpreting mixed signals as mystery and interpreting them as meaningful patterns. One key insight is that obsession rarely hides perfectly. Men who are deeply invested will always reveal themselves in small, often subconscious ways, through micro-expressions, inconsistent communication, emotional slips, or patterns of attention. The more you observe, the clearer the picture becomes. These signs aren't always easy to see at first, but once you train yourself to notice them, you can read the emotional subtext of his actions with precision. Another takeaway is that hidden obsession can be both flattering and risky. At first, it may feel like a secret admiration, the subtle focus on your life, the thoughtful gestures, the attentiveness you didn't expect. But obsession can escalate into pressure, emotional volatility, or possessiveness if left unchecked. Recognizing the difference between deep interest and controlling behavior is essential for maintaining healthy boundaries and emotional safety. It's also important to understand the psychological reasons behind his actions. Fear of vulnerability, past emotional wounds, and the desire to maintain perceived control all shape why he hides his feelings. Awareness of these underlying motives allows you to interpret his behavior without taking it personally. His obsession is about him, his internal conflict, his fears, and his emotional intensity, not a reflection of your worth. Finally, your response is the ultimate tool. Staying grounded, consistent, and emotionally centered lets you interact without losing your power. You can observe, engage, or set limits while remaining confident and self-assured. This balance protects you from getting caught in the push-pull of obsession and creates a dynamic where mutual respect is possible. In the end, recognizing a man's hidden obsession is about clarity, empowerment, and emotional intelligence. It gives you the ability to navigate relationships consciously, respond thoughtfully, and safeguard your own peace of mind. By understanding the subtle cues, emotional slips, and behavioral patterns, you can move through connections with insight rather than confusion, seeing both the charm and the warning signs of hidden obsession. As we wrap up, it's important to remember that identifying a man's hidden obsession isn't about playing games or judging him. It's about understanding the truth beneath the surface. The subtle cues, emotional slips, and texting patterns we've covered are all pieces of a larger picture, giving you insight into his feelings while helping you maintain clarity and control in your own life. Knowledge is power, and in relationships, it allows you to see reality without being swept up by confusion or uncertainty. The first next step is awareness. Start paying attention to small patterns in his behavior without overanalyzing or projecting your own assumptions. Notice how he responds, what he remembers, and how his energy shifts around you. These are the authentic signs of hidden attachment, even when he tries to appear indifferent. Awareness is the foundation. Once you can recognize these signals, you no longer feel caught off guard or second-guess every interaction. The second step is boundaries. Knowing someone may be obsessed doesn't mean you have to mirror their intensity or compromise your own comfort. Be consistent in how you engage, prioritize your emotional needs, and respond in ways that preserve your confidence. Boundaries are not only protective, they also teach him how to relate to you respectfully. Finally, approach the connection with intention. Decide whether you want to encourage distance or simply observe his behavior while staying grounded in your own life. Obsession can be fascinating to watch, but it should never disrupt your peace, autonomy, or self-worth. Remember, understanding hidden obsession equips you with insight, confidence, and emotional intelligence. You can navigate these dynamics with clarity, recognize genuine affection versus fixation, and move forward empowered rather than confused. The key is observation, self-respect, and conscious action, allowing you to handle even the most intense hidden emotions with calm, confidence, and control.